Today is the 2nd of September and it's Eric's 40th birthday. Eric Karl Anderson from The Lonesome Reader. And Sean over at Sean the Book Maniac created a tag specially for the birthday, the Eric 40th birthday tag. And I thought this was a really lovely idea, and Sean also tagged me. So I'm delighted to wish Eric a very, very happy birthday through this tag. There are 10 prompts, and the first one is thanks a bunch. A book or books you first heard about from Eric's channel or his blog, because he also has a blog, The Lonesome Reader, or that you and he both love. Now, Eric and I disagree a lot about books, and that makes our conversations always very interesting. But there are a couple of books that we both love. I'm not sure whether I heard about this book first from his channel, but I know that we both love it, and that is Daniel Dutton's Margaret I, published in 2016. Now, if you're following my channel for any length of time, you know that I'm a big fan of Margaret Cavendish. Margaret Cavendish was a 17th century writer, philosopher. She was born in 1623, and the book, Margaret I, is a fictionalized account of her life. It's not, as Eric said in his review on the Lonesome Reader blog, I will leave a link to that review down below, it's not your typical historical novel. First of all, it's really slim. It's under 200 pages, and even though Margaret died young, she died when she was 50, it's quite slim, to prop a whole life into under 200 pages. So what the book does is more a sort of a stream of consciousness, reflection on Margaret's life, told from Margaret's point of view. It's very intimate, a very gentle approach to the person, and I loved it. It's not for everybody, I know that, because, like I said, it's not your typical historical fiction, but I really, really loved it, and I know that Eric loved it as well. The second prompt is looking forward. A book you want to read because of Eric's channel or his blog. And there's a lot of possibilities, because I even though we disagree, I always found, like I said, his views interesting, and I often tend to pick up his suggestions or his recommendations and read the book. But I picked a new release, a book that will be released in October, and that is Claire Fuller, Bitter Orange. I really liked Claire Fuller's previous book, Swimming Lessons, and when Eric talked about Bitter Orange on his blog, or better to say, he wrote about it, I really liked the story, and like I said, because I liked a previous book, I thought we'll pick it up in October. The book is set in 1969, and we follow Frances, who rents the rooms below her house to a couple, Clara and Peter, who seem to be, a very sophisticated, intellectual, interesting, different couple, and Frances starts to quote-unquote spy on them. But if I understand the blurb correctly, there might be some hidden secrets in Clara and Peter's life. So there's not all what it seems, and I'm a sucker for this kind of story. So Claire Fuller's Bitter Orange. Thank you, Eric, for the recommendation, and I will read it towards the end of the year after it's published in October. On to prompt number 3, Table Turn, a book you recommend to Eric to read. And of course, because I'm German originally, I picked a German book. But don't worry, Eric, in the English translation, and that is Irmgard Coin's The Artificial Silk Girl, first published in Germany in 1932, but newly translated into English by Katie van Ankom and published in 2002. Now, Irmgard Coin is one of my favorite modern classic German authors, but unfortunately, she's all but forgotten, not only in English, but also in Germany, in her mother country. She was born at the beginning of the 20th century, and she wrote very um, yeah, how can I put it? She really captured in her novel. She really captured the time she was writing about, and the Artificial Silk Girl is set in the Roaring Twenties in Berlin, but um, uh, in her story about your typical material girl, way before Madonna, Irmgard Coin portrays the city with its glitter, but also with the seedy underbelly. Um, I'm, I think, Eric, you might like the book. I'm not sure, but I would highly recommend it that you check out Irmgard Coin because she is really worth being read a lot more than she is. Prompt number 4, Eric Carl Anderson, a book by an author with 3 names. And there was only one choice possible, another author we both love, and that's Joyce Carol Oates. And I can't, of course, recommend a book to Eric because he has probably read them all. But there is a new book coming out by Joyce Carol Oates. She's an extremely prolific writer. I don't know how she does it because she also teaches. But in November of this year, and the book is called Hazards of Time Travel. I'm sorry, and it's a science fiction. That's all I need to know. Joyce Carol Oates and science fiction. And Eric, maybe we can do a buddy read if you haven't read it already. Prompt number 5, Expatriate Love, a book by and or about an American living in the UK or vice versa. For those of you who might not know, Eric was born in the US but now lives in the UK. That's why this prompt. And I have to apologize to Sean, who did a lot of effort to come up with these prompts. I had to tweak this a little because I couldn't come up with a book that I really wanted to talk about. So I chose Helen Hanf, 84 Charing Cross Road, which came out in 1970. And it's a book about a woman living in New York, but having or starting a conversation by mail, by letter, those were the times, with a bookshop owner in London. And even though it's not quite what the prompt asked, but I thought it was fitting because it's a wonderful, sweet book about the love of books, about a book owner and a bookshop. And if you read the book, you will know that in the end, the prompt sort of fits better than in the beginning. I'm not going to say any more for those of you who haven't read it, but I can highly recommend it if you want to read something really sweet and nice about the love of books. Prompt number 6, Meta, a book with a novelist or a writer as protagonist. And there are many choices again, but I chose a book that I've talked about quite a lot on my channel last year, and that is Delphine de Vigance, based on a true story, translated by George Miller, originally published in France in 2015, and the English translation in 2017. The story centers about Delphine, same name as the author, which has some significance, but I'm not going to tell you because that would spoil you if you haven't read it. Anyway, Delphine had a novel, a book out, which was a huge success, and she is now crippled by not being able to write the next book. And then she meets a woman, only referred to as Elle, who is everything that Delphine always wanted to be. Sophisticated, intellectual, elegant. The 2 women become friends, and it all goes south from there. It's sort of a psychological thriller element in the book, how the friendship goes from beautiful to toxic and what happens then. But it also explores in a very typical French way, I think, with reference to, philosophers and other thinkers, French thinkers. It explores the nature of reality and what is true and what is not true in a book or a memoir. I really love the writing style. I've read most of Delphine de Vigance's books now, and I can highly, highly recommend it. Prompt number 7, Lordy Lordy, a book by or about a 40-year-old and or a book published 40 years ago, meaning in 1978, Eric's birth year. I chose the latter, a book published in 1978, and I, of course, because this tag is for Eric, I had to choose a book about books, and that's Penelope Fitzgerald's The Bookshop, which was, of course, published in 1978. Now, Penelope Fitzgerald, I know that Eric at least likes some of her work. I'm not sure about The Bookshop, but I really like this book. It's set in 1959 in a small sea town in England. And we have Penelope Green. The small village doesn't have a bookshop, and she decides to open one. And it's a very small, almost novella-like book, 160 pages or something. Very bittersweet about the struggles that Penelope Green has, you know, to get the other shop owners and village people to accept the bookstore. And as the blurb said, she might have to face the truth that a town that doesn't have a bookstore maybe doesn't want one. So if you are into this kind of story, and as I said, rather bittersweet, and in a very elegant writing style, then The Bookshop might be something for you. Prompt number 8, Handlebar None. A book by or about someone with a fabulous mustache and or beard. And that's the second prompt that I tweaked a little because I didn't find a book that fit the prompt perfectly that I wanted to talk about. And instead I want to talk about Emma O'Toole's book, Girls Will Be Girls, a non-fiction book published in 2015. Now, Emma O'Toole is an Irish feminist, and she gained notoriety and fame because she didn't shave. I don't mean the beard, but she didn't shave her body hair, like under her armpits and her legs. And she talks a lot about, also in this collection, she talks a lot about the image we have about femininity, about feminism, but also about playing with the roles and the images, dressing up. And hair plays a big role in that. So I thought it sort of fits the prompt because it's about body hair. Prompt number 9, Out Out Brief Candle. A book in which a birthday figures prominently. And for this prompt, I chose one of my favorite writers, who is an American, but living in the UK most of the time, and that is Lionel Shriver and her book, The Post-Birthday World, which was published in 2007. If you're following my channel, you know that I really, really love Lionel Shriver's work. And this book centers around a woman, Irina. She is in a long-term relationship with Lawrence, and the relationship, as well as Lawrence, they are both comfortable and reliable and sturdy and steady, but not very exciting. And then comes Ramsey. He is in everything the opposite of Irina's husband. You know, like very, eccentric and outgoing and a little bit dangerous maybe. And on Ramsey's birthday party, that's why it fits the prompt, Irina has to make a choice. Whether to kiss Ramsey and to leave her relationship with Lawrence and go on a completely new path, or whether to forsake the temptation and stay in the steady, well-known, comfortable relationship. So from this birthday party onwards, we see Irina's life in two different paths, in alternating in an alternating story. I thought it was a really nice exploration of the choices we make and how maybe a little choice can have big consequences. So this was the last prompt for the books, but there's a 10th prompt, and that is many happy returns, and I have to tag people. And because Eric lives in the UK, I thought I'd tag some of my favorite UK booktubers. So I tag Simon from Savage Reads, of course. I tag Mercy from Mercy's Bookish Musings. I tag Jean from Jean's Bookish Thoughts, and Sophie from Portal in the Pages. I hope you will all do the tag, and even if I didn't tag you, do it if you like it. Again, happy birthday, Eric. I hope you liked that we did this tag for you. And thank you very much for watching to my viewers. And talk to me down in the comments, of course, as always. And I'll see you all in my next video, which will be up probably tomorrow on Sunday, as usual. Bye-bye.